Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So, you know, you put unions and veterans together, and that's your focus, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, the basic idea is that, you know, the American veteran is part of the fabric of the working class people of America. Most of them come from working class families. And when they come home, they go back to working class families, and they create their own families when they come back from the service. So it's something that's very intertwined, and it always has been. The labor-veteran community or connection has gone back from, you know, to the beginning of the labor movement in America.
Yeah, I mean, veterans are working class people.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, my experience, you know, growing up as a kid in a housing project during the 70s, you know, I saw a lot of people coming back from Vietnam, and they dumped those poor men back into our communities, broken, damaged, alcohol, drug problems, broken bodies, broken minds, and they were just dumped like trash almost. And these are the people that you see politicians all the time want to take pictures with. And I said before we went into Iraq and Afghanistan and all of these latest conflicts, the only thing that I'm against them, but we cannot relive the 1970s. We must not allow political folks to take the pictures and praise the people on the pedestals, only to leave them in the shadows and desperate.
Yeah, and we can see something that's happening with our generation of warfighters and veterans that, you know, if you took a public opinion poll, people would think that veterans are being taken care of more than ever because they're up on a pedestal, people are taking care of them. But the reality of it, the programs that truly help our veterans are being slashed and cut. While one politician might wear a lapel pin and says he's patriotic because of that, at the same time he's cutting workers' rights where tons of veterans are, say, in the AFGE, for instance, 32% of the AFGE workers are veterans, and they're trying to gut the system. There's almost a worse thing happening because there's such a facade of taking care of veterans and supporting veterans.
I've got the ribbon on my car.
I've got the yellow ribbon. But what are you truly doing today to support our young veterans? Because you've got to realize, you know, when people look at veterans, I always ask people, what do you see? Is it a soldier fighting in Iraq? Well, that's a service member. They're not a veteran. Is it the old veteran from World War II or Korea going on honor fight? That's a veteran. But the thing is he got medals, the exact same medals me and thousands of other veterans in our war got. At the exact same time, we looked exactly the same, except there's a 60-year difference. We were young men and women that volunteered to fight for our country, and we're going to be around for a long time. And it's our duty as Americans, I believe, to support and make sure that our veterans have a good life for the rest of their life. The shortest part of any veteran's life, the majority of veterans, is their time in service. And we ought to make sure that when they come home, the number one thing that we've got to do for our veterans is make sure they have good, gainful employment they can be proud and have dignity.
Yeah, again, and it comes back to, you know, a lot of the union jobs that we've seen. And one of the programs that we here on the program have supported for years is the Helmets to Hard Hats program, something that you've benefited from.
Yeah, and I love to just tell my story for a second real quick, if that's all right.
I was hoping you would.
Because it relates to Helmets to Hard Hats. And I tell my story as a voice for the thousands and thousands of other veterans that went through the exact same situation that I did. When I was 17 years old, I was about to go to college, and I decided that I wanted to serve in the military. I didn't want history to pass me by. And that's what's very unique about my generation of veterans. We were 100% volunteer. And we knew that when we went, there was a darn good chance we were going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. 5 months after I signed my dotted line and went to basic training, I found myself in a convoy from Kuwait to Samarra, Iraq, with a bunch of other young men and women that had no clue what laid in front of us, if we were going to make it home. And that's, you know, that's a very powerful thing. By the time I was 22, I was leading a fire team, 5 soldiers. By the time I was 25, I was leading a full squad of veterans. That's 2 sergeants and 14 soldiers. That's a lot of weight to be put on our young men and women. And I had dignity. I had this pride. You know, I had medals, and I would come home, my family showed me off. But I left the military in 2009, and things changed really quickly. There was no jobs. There was no veterans programs at that time. We had the worst economy in history, and I struggled. I went from $10 an hour job to $10 an hour job. I had a truck repossessed. this is the same story of thousands of other veterans. And my dignity just got, chipped away, one piece at a time. Every time you got turned down for a good job. I remember going to a business, and there was a mid-level management telling people how to load soda pop on the back of trucks. 8 guys at night. And I thought, I could do this. I'm a staff sergeant. I just led 15 soldiers in the combat. Went through an interview process. The last thing he asked me was, where's your associate's degree at? And I said,
it's in Iraq.
Yeah. I just spent 7 years of my life deployed pretty much. Didn't really have time for night school, and I left that day, and my dignity had been completely. I'd borrow money to go to that job interview to get gas, and my dignity was at the lowest point. I had lost it, but luckily, there's a second story. This is a story of thousands of people, and this is the union story. Because a week later, I had the opportunity to start a Helmets to Hard Hats welding program and learn how to be a union pipe fitter. And they said, brother, you're going to have a middle-class job. Thank you for your service. I'm not just going to thank you. We're going to give you a paycheck every Friday with health care, benefits, and a retirement. And I could have just sat, retired, and just been a normal person like anybody else. But I decided to start making my voice heard. And I started fighting for veterans and labor in Illinois, and they haven't shut me up yet. So.
And good on you.
Yeah,
good on you.
No,
and good on them as well. I mean,
yeah.
and I can see in your face, I mean, you can see that pride and then the loss, how it affects you.
Yeah.
I mean, because I remember 2009, and I remember that era where, we were, anytime you saw somebody in a uniform, you ran up and you shake their hand, thank you, or you bought them dinner, and I did it as well. You'd see a young couple, he's in uniform or she's in uniform, and you go, hey, I'll pick up their check. But yet, as soon as you take them out of that uniform, then it's a whole different story. Now they're bums.
Exactly.
Now they can't even buy their own meal. You came home to parades and all of this stuff, and to have that kind of indignity is, again, I go back to my thoughts about those guys that came back from Vietnam. Did we learn nothing?
I think there was such a rush to try and show patriotism. We never really looked at what those veterans truly need. Now, some people did. National Building Trades did.
Right.
They said in 2008, we're going to make sure we take care of this generation of veterans. And it was Vietnam veterans that entered the workforce after Vietnam said, we're not going to let this happen. It was the Teamsters. It was the UA VIP, Veterans in Piping program, that started around that time. Since that time, the National Building Trades and affiliated unions have spent over $1 billion. And I said it again, over $1 billion to train and give gainful employment, not jobs, gainful employment to our veterans. No organization in America is doing that. We have unions like the machinist unions and AFGE and the postal workers that are fighting to preserve veterans' preference, to make sure that our veterans got a shot when they come home. We have ASME that's under attack all over the country, but they're made up of a massive amount of veterans, but they're fighting for veterans' preference. And at the same time that people are talking about supporting our veterans, they're trying to cut things like veterans' preference out of the contracts, and that's
and they're attacking them ad nauseum.
Exactly,
look, I mean, I look at AFGE, and you pointed out the percentage, which is a third.
A third, yeah.
A third of, and wage freezes for what now, 5-6 years now. Yeah. You're talking about more cutting in their ability to fight for better wages, hours, conditions, to have that voice. So would it be safe to say that an attack on working people, an attack on unions, is really, in the end of it, an attack on veterans as well?
It is 100%. Our veterans go back to work. Most of the time when they come home. Right now, there's a historic low unemployment rate for our veterans because they're all working. Many of them are very underemployed.
Right.
We have almost 2 million veterans that are making less than $15 an hour, and that's a fight that I'm ready to have, because no veteran, no American deserves to work 40 hours a week and get paid $10 an hour or $8 an hour with no benefits. 39% of all veterans who work in construction make less than $20 an hour, less than $19.99 an hour, and they're not getting health care. They're in places where they're not represented by our unions. An attack on our workers is definitely a direct attack on our veterans.
So you brought up healthcare, and healthcare has been front and center this whole year.
Yes.
The whole repeal and replace thing. How does that affect veterans? I mean, we can also go into the whole VA privatization scheme, the fact that there are, 40,000 unfilled positions in the VA. I mean, you look at all this stuff, and while we say we got the ribbon on our car, we say we love the veterans, we thank them, we've got politicians who wrap themselves in them, yet policy-wise, every time you look, healthcare being front and center, we're failing. You know, I always believed, and again, this comes back to just belief as someone who was never in the military, that if you were a veteran, if you went to fight for this country, you got health care until the day you died. That was, I believed, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm probably, in this day and age, might be, but that was the compact we made with people who put themselves in that position.
That's the idea a lot of people have. That's the idea a lot of elected officials have. The reality is completely different. When you leave your military service, you get rated by the VA. Everybody is eligible for the VA. Not everybody is eligible for health care. Not everybody is eligible for dental. Right now, there's almost 2 million veterans that are on Medicaid or Medicare. We had a very high percentage of uninsured veterans. Because of the ACA, I don't remember the number exactly right now, but millions of veterans gain in insurance that they never had. And that's a really serious thing. You know, you'd think that people that go fight for our country or even just signing the line and being willing to put themselves on the line deserve that kind of a benefit when they come home. But again, we see it under attack. You know, for instance, the VA. For the veterans, I'm a disabled veteran. I get to go to the VA. We've had issues with the VA, but guess what? It's not the workers. It's not that 32% of veterans. There's a drastic underfunding for the VA. We've got 49,000 open vacancies for providers and positions at the VA that need to be filled, but they refuse to do it. And to me, you can talk about the VA and then everyone talking about the issues. Well, let me tell you what an issue is. When you have 49,000 positions open that's supposed to be taking care of our bravest and finest Americans, that is a serious issue. That is a very serious issue.
I'm with you. So last question I've got you, coming out of this convention, you know, how do we change that? How do we educate people? Because look, I truly believe every American in this country at least says, you know what, those people like you who went to fight for this country, we should be taking care of you. No one should be in the situation that you found yourself. No one should be in that kind of indignity, that loss of pride. No one should feel that.
No, yeah, I agree. It comes down to one thing: unity, and unity in education. And that's one of the things we're doing at the Union Veterans Council. We are working to build a part of the labor community that uplifts our veterans in our community, educates them, and turns them into, you know, our greatest activists. We have to band together and fight to make sure that our veterans are taken care of. People have got to remember, there's 18-year-old kids getting ready to deploy next month to go to Afghanistan from a war that we started 16 years ago. Think about that for a second. Some of my friends that I fought with and served with, their sons are now going to Iraq and Afghanistan. This is not something that's in right now. And we owe it to this next generation. We owe it to those, as a veteran, I owe it to that young 18-year-old kid that I'm going to make it better for him when he comes home. And we can do it through unions. We can do it through organized labor, because there's nothing better than a good job when a veteran comes home. And you know, just to say one thing, you know, some of the things that we're doing, you know, we're going out, we're building local chapters of the Union Veterans Council. If you are union, sign up for unionveterans.org. It's a great information. Find us on Facebook. And to leave it, one of the things that the labor has done, we are on military bases now. We are grabbing the veteran 3 months before they leave the military service, giving them a quick pre-apprenticeship, learning how to be a pipe fitter, electrician, painter, and the minute that they leave, they've got a job. And there is nothing better. That is an example that we could show to every corporation in the world, in America, as a model of how to support our veterans. Let's start with making sure that when a veteran leaves, we know he has a job when he goes back, and she has a job. We have more women in the military than we ever have, and they have even a higher unemployment rate than normal veterans. We need to make sure our guys and gals that fight for our country have a job waiting for them when they come home, and a good union job with rights that they fought for. And that's it. I mean, and that's the deal. And we've got to build a movement. We've got to fight. We got to fight to make sure that we don't have these issues after the next one, because those white-haired men, they're going to send another 18-year-old kid again, and we've got to be ready to take care of them.
Good stuff. Will, I appreciate the time. Great
Hey, man,
talk with
thank
you.
you.
Will Addig, we'd like to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or continue to follow us at ricksmithshow.com. Quick break right back here from the AFL-CIO convention. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. We're here at the AFL-CIO's convention in St. Louis. I'm sitting here with Roger Phillips. He's the communications director for the Airline Pilots Association, also a United pilot. Roger, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be here, Rick. Thank you.
What do you think?
Fantastic. Great turnout. My first time here. Good energy. It's an honor to be here on behalf of the United Pilots.
Now, look, I think about pilots, and I can't think about it without thinking about Sully. The Tom Hanks movie.
Yes.
You know what? It's always been amazing to me that everyone loved Sully.
Yes.
Until he started saying, you know what, pilots are underpaid, overworked.
Sully did a great job, and he's a good advocate for our industry. The question I always get is, would you land it in the Hudson? And I say, absolutely. Every pilot would have landed in the Hudson.
And would have
he did a great job. He did a great
But you know, the reason I bring that up is, you know, when you talk about wages, hours,
Yes.
conditions,
Yes.
Pilots aren't you generally the kind of people that you think about as a worker?
It's a good question. You know, we're a unique breed in the union world, so to speak. We, the last 10 years, 10, 15 years after September 11th, we kind of call the lost decade. We gave up a lot. We gave up total compensation, upwards of half of our compensation package. We're just starting to get that back. There's a lot of work to do to continue that movement, but yeah, the fact that we gave that up has really strengthened our resolve and brought our union closer together.
Yeah, we both share something. I was a truck driver for 20 years. Deregulation really killed us both.
Yes. It took a while in the airline industry. It was a very gradual and slow decline. Again, September 11th was a turning point for us. And like I said, we're clawing our way back, and we're more unified than ever.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to sit down with, I saw you got to talk about what's going on.
Yes.
You know, you look at the disasters we've had.
Yes.
What's infuriating to me as a truck driver, as a Teamster for 20 years, the message right away when the hurricanes hit, especially in Puerto Rico, is, well, you got those Teamsters who are striking for higher wages and using this tragedy, this disaster, to enrich themselves, which is completely false, completely fabricated, no truth whatsoever, but that doesn't matter to the right wing. And you even had the president regurgitating, we need to get those truck drivers back.
Right.
You're someone who, through the unions, through the AFL-CIO, through United, took tons of stuff down there, water, all kinds of stuff, and also workers.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
It was an amazing event. The AFL had contacted the chairman of the Airline Pilots Association at United, Todd Insler. And Todd sits on the board of directors with United. He was able to contact our board of directors, and within 24 hours, United said, we got an airplane for you guys. You get the workers, we got the plane.
Good on them.
AFL was able to get, in the course of 4 to 5 days, over 300 workers to Newark to get that aircraft down to Puerto Rico. We ended up carrying, I believe it was 311 workers and 38,000 pounds of supplies.
Nice.
It was a success. It was unionism at its best. It was America at its best. People coming together in short notice for the better good of their fellow humans.
Yeah, the reason I think it's so important, and when I saw you and I said, I think we got to talk about this, is because I don't think unions get credit for this stuff. You know, you look at the 9/11, you had all those union members rushing for the rescue efforts.
Yes.
And what we've done, since, don't even get me started. But anytime there's a disaster, anytime there's suffering in the community, it's union members who step to the front. And the other part of this, they also don't get the credit for it, nor are they looking for it.
They're not.
Which is why I have to say that it's important that we give them credit for it.
It's amazing. When I was down in Puerto Rico when we first landed, we had a press conference we gave. And I remember exactly what I said. It was kind of off the cuff, but we had all the workers there, citizens from San Juan. And in short, I said, labor built the United States, and labor will rebuild Puerto Rico. It's true. It is the foundation of rebuilding, and it's the foundation of a movement. And I was proud to be part of it, just like I'm proud to be here today.
Yeah, good on you. But here's the thing: we see this frame.
Yes.
The media has framed it. We've sent all of this relief aid.
Yep.
It's all piled up at the ports. There's
Yep.
tons of it there,
Yep.
but nobody's taking it where they're going.
Yep.
Without actually being honest and saying, look, the roads are impassable.
Correct.
You got a pothole. You got major, destruction. You got
Correct.
wires, all over the place. You got debris from people's homes and their
Yes.
possessions.
Correct.
How bad is it on the ground?
It's bad. The latest statistics were 5% of the island has electric. About 40% has fresh water. The electric happens to be primarily concentrated in San Juan, and it is unreliable. The circuit breakers are popping constantly. So it's bad. Roads are getting cleaned slowly. However, what's not being resolved is next to the roads. There's piles of rubble, but next to the roads is power lines. Next to the roads are water lines and so forth. So it's getting there, but it's slow. This is going to take years. To me, the answer I keep on giving is it's going to be a generation. It's not going to be a year. It's not going to be 3 years. It's not going to be 5 years. To really get that, it's going to be a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, because I go back to right after Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana.
Yes.
We went down there, and you saw all of this destruction. You
Yes.
saw all of these homes, all these people's possessions just piled.
Yes.
And
yes.
it was literally at least a year, probably 2,
Yes.
before that stuff was taken away, and life sort of came back.
Fundamental difference there, and it's going to come back. The spirit of the people is amazing. I mean, I was brought to tears multiple times. I was with my coworker from United and Liz Schuler on a tour of the island at one point, and we were brought to tears multiple times because of the level of destruction. It's been pretty much destroyed. To me, the difference between what happened in the United States and what's happening there is they started out with an infrastructure that was not as strong,
right.
And that has been exploited fully
right.
through the storm.
So this is, to me, is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And this is an opportunity to really use, and I hate this frame, but
Yep.
to use this disaster to move forward and say, you know what, we're going to rebuild
Yep.
in a way that may be sustainable in the era of climate change. Whether you believe it's man-made or not,
Yes.
it's happening, but maybe to invest heavily, and not just
Agreed.
for them, but also how are we going to do things in Florida and Mississippi
Agreed.
and Louisiana?
Agreed. We have a lot of decisions to make. There's a fork in the road in this country, and like you said, whether you believe it or not, with climate change, we have decisions to make right now in how we want to handle this and how we want to proceed. And Puerto Rico is going to be the model of how that will be handled in the future.
Yeah, let me ask you, last line of questioning,
Yep.
because as you said, this isn't going away.
Nope.
You guys have done a great thing. You sent
Yep.
a couple hundred people there,
Yep.
supplies, it's ongoing. How do people help? I, for instance, signed up to be one of those folks. I was a little bit late, and they said, hey, if we do it again, by all means, you'll be going.
Yep.
Do we send people? Do we send money? What do we do to help?
You know, and that's a fantastic question. What we don't have right now, and the reason I can't answer that specifically, is we do not have, in my opinion, the leadership on a macro level that we need. So I can't answer that.
Is that the truth?
Generally speaking, from everything I've read, finding a charity of your choice in a monetary donation is probably the most helpful at this point.
Right.
Disasters are notorious for getting a warehouse of teddy bears, and they don't need teddy bears. They need food, water, and they need the funds to get those there. So
medicine.
So there's a lot of charities out there that are helping. I can't tell you those right now, but there's a lot of great charities that are on the forefront of that. We'll get those to you.
That'd be great. No, there's a lot. Look, I know the AFL-CIO has.
Absolutely.
You can donate there through your unions. I know my union, the Teamsters Union, they have a fund to help as well. Again, the reason I think this is so important in talking to you about this is so important is I don't think unions get the credit they deserve. And you deserve to be, thank you, good on you.
And thank you.
Not that you wanted it, but I'm giving it to you anyway.
We don't. And the way I look at this is, I have said several times just now that this is going to be a years, if not a generation. The important thing about our mission that United Airlines sponsored was it brought the attention of this issue to the forefront more and more. And if we got anything out of it, that was it.
Good stuff. Roger, thank you so much,
Rick. Okay.
Good stuff. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell us what you think of our coverage here of the AFL-CIO convention. Right back after this.
We nailed that one.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show here at the AFL-CIO's convention in St. Louis. As we spend a little time talking about the future for workers on the job, I also want to talk about some other things and how labor can use its power, to help working people in other ways. And one of the things I've always advocated for is health insurance run by labor, making sure that workers get the benefits of their policies, and also banking. I don't use a bank myself. I'm always a credit union guy. But when there's an opportunity to help out a brother, I think it's a good idea. That's why I'm sitting here with James Barber. He's the president and CEO of Union Plus Mortgage Company. James, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you very much.
So explain to me what you do.
So basically, we're a mortgage company, and we're a company that started about 9 months ago.
What? Oh, he sat on. Oops, sorry. Go.
So James Barber, it's Union Plus Mortgage Company, and we're a new mortgage company. We're owned by the AFL-CIO and Union Plus. Our name Union Plus has been around the labor movement for probably 25 years, but this new company is a mortgage brokerage company. We are licensed now in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and some Midwestern states. Our focus is union members and providing them the Union Plus member benefit, which is kind of an insurance product that will pay your mortgage in the event that you can't pay it yourself for a period of time when you have income disability, and that's a free product. The company, the profits of the company are going to accrue to the labor movement, and we're going to have union loan officers as we grow the company. As I said, it's a brand new company in Mount Laurel, New Jersey.
That's a huge thing. Now, I used to have the Union Plus credit card.
Right.
And one of the major advantages is just what you said. If something happens, you get sick, or if you end up going on strike or you're locked out, the credit card used to pay your minimum payments.
Right.
So that you didn't fall behind, there were no penalties, and it gave you that gap, that window to get back on your feet, after the fact that if something happened, be it, like I said, a sickness or a strike or a lockout.
Right. That trust fund, it's the same trust fund, and getting a mortgage through Union Plus Mortgage Company allows you access into that trust fund in the event you have.
Now, so you said it's a new company. How are we doing so far?
Well, we did our first loans in July, so we're.
Oh, you're that new.
We're very, very new, and right now, really, our main goal is to promote ourselves directly to members, to promote ourselves to union leaders, and promote ourselves to union presidents. As I said, we're owned primarily by the AFL-CIO. The organization Union Plus, which you just mentioned, owns about 10% of it, and then the rest of the company, approximately 20%, are owned by 15 unions across the country.
And the good thing about this, and again, you hit on it, is that all of the profits and the stuff go back into the movement. So it's not like you're feeding some greedy bankers or some big CEOs that we're going to have to bail out in a couple of years.
That's exactly right. The larger we get, the more loans we promote, the more profits we make are going to accrue primarily to the AFL-CIO.
So what took so long?
Well,
I mean, to me, this seems like something we should have done 50 years ago.
Well, I think it does take a long time to create this structure. Right now, in the way we're structured as a mortgage company, we don't need a tremendous amount of capital to start. So certainly banking is a capital-intensive business, and this is a way to access mortgage finance without a tremendous amount of capital.
So if someone lived in, like I'm at in Pennsylvania, and I wanted to renegotiate my mortgage or buy a new house or something like that, how do we go about it?
So you can contact us two primary ways. One is 855-UNION-53. That's our phone number, and we have folks there who can talk to you and assist you whether you have a large mortgage problem, a little mortgage problem, or no mortgage problem. So really we're there to provide advice. And the other way is on our website, www.unionplusmortgage.com.
Unionplusmortgage.com. And I think, look, at the end of it, as working people, we need to build these institutions for ourselves. Because look, what happens if we have another great collapse?
Yeah.
You know, I've always said that, you know, the mortgage industry especially, I want it to be small enough and local enough that if crisis does happen, you go and you talk to the bank manager, so that we're not repossessing people's homes. We're working with people.
Right.
The problem is, things that, to me, and you could disagree, but that the industry has gotten so big and so impersonal that it's just a transaction.
The industry, it is a large industry, and you know the country is a large country. The finances are very large behind it. But fortunately, we have very good folks on staff who can explain the process and whatever the best solution might be, whether it might be our product or someone else's product.
So let me ask you the other question I'm sure everybody would want to know.
Yeah.
In comparison to the banks, I go through a regular mortgage. How do you compare? How do you compare price-wise?
Sure.
You know, where's the catch?
Right. I think there are two things about us which are pretty positive. One, we basically work in a call center, so we don't have salespeople that are out calling on people. So our cost is going to be relatively low, and because we're in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, we're using some space there. We're going to be competitive, I think, compared to everybody, particularly on lower loan amounts. We're extremely competitive, and because we're a mortgage broker, all our fees are disclosed and very clear, unlike some other corporate structures.
Now, it just seems to me, again, this is another piece of that puzzle that working people absolutely need to make it to that middle class.
More than anything else, we can provide you solid advice. We will provide you sound advice. We will not talk you into a product that's unneeded. We will not tell you to refinance if you don't need to refinance. And to me, sound financial advice is really the first key.
So your commission-based salary, where are you at? Your people, because look, I've often believed that if you're on a commission base, you're going to sell me something I don't need because your interests are into it. So the people who I'm talking to on the phone.
The people you're talking to on the phone are going to be loan officers, and they're going to be paid a salary plus a bonus. That's the structure. And they're going to be unionized employees. We don't have enough employees, so they're not unionized yet. But when we have more employees, they will be unionized.
Well, you are new, and I think it's a great thing, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon and see how this progresses, because it sounds to me like a good idea.
Great.
James,
very
thank
nice
you so
chatting
much.
with you, Rick.
Great talking with you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Is this something that you think is a great idea? You can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com, or send us a message at Twitter at @RickSmithShow. Right back. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. We're here at the AFL-CIO convention. Our coverage continues. You know, one of the things I like to talk about is worker organizing around the world, because look, at the end of the day, when you have that rising tide, it should lift all boats. I hate seeing the competition across borders where workers are in a race to the bottom. So when I see organizing going on across the world, good thing. And I'm standing here with Evangelia Argueta Chinchilla. She is the General Workers Confederation of Honduras coordinator, and she's the coordinator of the Maguila Organizing Project. Thank you for taking time for us.
Gracias por tomar un tiempo para nosotros hoy.
Gracias a ustedes por invitarme.
So tell me, what are the conditions in your country and the conditions workers face?
Cuéntame de las condiciones de los trabajadores en su país.
Bueno, en Honduras hemos ido avanzando en el proceso de derechos laborales de los trabajadores después de que hicimos un proceso de unas denuncias internacionales y después de que se presentó una queja sobre el Tratado de Libre Comercio. Entonces, eso podemos decir que a partir del que es 2014, 2015 hasta la fecha, los derechos de los trabajadores han sido respetados en una medida fuerte en el tema, por ejemplo, en el sector de la industria de la maquila, la costura y la confección.
So in Honduras, we have seen some really important advances for labor rights on behalf of workers who've been organizing in the country. We submitted a complaint under an international mechanism, the CAFTA labor chapter, and since that point that we've been engaging in this process to improve labor rights, from about 2014, 2015, we've seen some real advances for labor rights compliance, especially in the maquila or the apparel, textile, and light manufacturing industry.
So in looking at this, you look at the number of workers who have come forward and organized for better wages, hours, and conditions, and this rapid success that you've had. Explain how this has made people's lives better in your country.
Entonces, cuando se mira el número impresionante de trabajadores que están organizándose en su industria, que están levantando su voz para defender sus derechos, ¿cómo eso está cambiando sus vidas? ¿Qué está mudando?
Claro, principalmente el avance se puede detectar cuando un sindicato o una organización de trabajadores tiene un contrato colectivo. Un contrato colectivo que les sirve a los trabajadores para mejorar sus condiciones, una serie de beneficios, que no es fácil el proceso con las empresas, el diálogo, y que finalmente las empresas han tenido que entender que tienen que mejorar las condiciones de salud, condiciones de beneficios económicos, a manera que los trabajadores se sientan realmente bien en un centro de trabajo.
So one of the most important ways that workers can advance their interests when they come together is through pushing for collective bargaining agreements. And it served workers to be able to achieve better working conditions, safer working conditions, better wages for their families. And it hasn't been an easy process. It's been a lot of pushing and a lot of work and a lot of organizing to help workers move employers to understand the benefits of a collective bargaining agreement. But we're now seeing worker health improved. We're seeing better economic advances for working class families.
That's good stuff. But we hear things about countries like Honduras, countries like Colombia. Is it dangerous in your country to organize? Is it dangerous for people to engage in trying to collectively bargain?
Escuchamos de los peligros para los sindicalistas en países como Honduras, como Colombia. ¿Cuáles son los peligros que enfrentan los sindicalistas?
Bueno, generalmente en el caso de un sector en Honduras, del sector de la gente del agro, por ejemplo, escuchamos amenazas que les envían a ellos, en donde les quieren como intimidar y decirles no pueden seguir con ese trabajo. También hay que comparar la violencia entre un país a otro con el tema de dirigentes sindicales. Por ejemplo, Guatemala. Guatemala es un país donde asesinan dirigentes cada semana. En Honduras, lo que en los últimos tiempos eso ha ido un poquito superándose con los dirigentes sindicales, pero no quiere decir que no hay amenazas, claro que sí las hay, principalmente en el sector agrícola. El sector de la maquila ya no se ve esa situación porque se denunciaron internacionalmente a estas transnacionales, y las transnacionales saben, las que están instaladas en el país, que eso sería grave para ellos, ¿no?
So in Honduras, where we see the most threats and intimidation and attacks against trade unionists is in the agricultural sector. It's become very dangerous for ag workers to be able to organize, and the violence that they face trying to do so. It's also important to mention our neighboring country, Guatemala, where almost every week we see unionists being attacked or even murdered. In the maquila sector, it's not the problem that it used to be, violence against trade unionists, because we have engaged in a very strong international denunciation campaign. And so the brands that were really behind all of the production came to see that it was not in their interest to have these kinds of denunciation campaigns, and things have really changed in the maquila industry for us.
Because I would argue that you've got a large number. I think you said 30,000 members in all of this.
Yo diría que lo que podría haber mejorado la situación también es el gran número de personas que han organizado. Dijeron que era que 30,000 miembros ya, 30,000 con cobertura.
Claro, en este momento el sector de la industria de textil maquila están organizados 45,000 trabajadores que están bajo la protección de una organización sindical. De esos 45,000 trabajadores, tenemos aproximadamente 38 o 40,000 trabajadores que están bajo la figura de un contrato colectivo. Entonces, esa cantidad de trabajadores ha sido como un ejemplo y un mensaje hacia los demás sectores del país de que hemos organizado, hemos sido ejemplo de diálogo sin necesidad de estar en conflictos estériles que no resuelven la situación.
So in the maquila sector, we have 45,000 workers who are organized. And within that number, we're looking at about 40,000 workers that are receiving the benefits of a collective bargaining agreement through that union activism. And that has really expanded the rights of workers across the industry. It's transformed the industry, and it's an example for the country. And I think it's a really positive example for the country because it shows that dialogue works, that we don't need to be in endless conflicts, that It's not making workers lose their jobs. It's not making companies go out of business. It's in everybody's favor.
It's not just an example for your country. It's an example for, I would argue, our country as well.
Eso no es ejemplo solamente para Honduras. Yo diría que es ejemplo para todos nosotros, hasta aquí en Estados Unidos.
Claro, porque un problema grave que tiene el movimiento sindical, y creería yo que en el mundo, es la división, cómo está dividido nuestro movimiento sindical. Entonces, desde las experiencias que estamos teniendo, esto nos está poniendo alertas que el movimiento sindical, independientemente de ideología, pensamiento, debe unificarse, porque si el movimiento no se unifica, no va a poder avanzar en la defensa de los derechos de los trabajadores.
The greatest lesson for us and the greatest achievement for us in Honduras has been unity within the labor movement. I think we see around the world the danger of divisions within the labor movement, and for us it has become very clear that ideological divisions or political divisions are not strengthening workers and they're not strengthening labor. And so when we've come together, we've been able to make these really tremendous achievements.
Yeah, an excellent message for, I think, for everyone.
Y este es un mensaje que realmente sirve a todos.
Claro, en Honduras tenemos dos centrales obreras, las dos principales centrales obreras que están creciendo y que han hecho un trabajo de lucha, y finalmente nosotros tuvimos que juntarnos y hacer una red de organizaciones para decir cuáles son los problemas que tenemos. Nosotros no vamos a ver nuestras diferencias, necesitamos poner en la mesa de discusión la problemática de los trabajadores. Y una vez que entendimos que teníamos que discutir la problemática como organizaciones sindicales, trasladamos esa problemática al sector empresarial, al sector gobierno, y eso es lo que estamos haciendo. No estamos viendo diferencias de ideologías ni nada que ver.
So in Honduras, in the maquila industry, there were principally two main labor confederations that were trying to organize workers. And for a long time, we were both doing our thing, just trying to organize workers and maintaining our big differences. When finally we saw that we really had the same goals, we came together, we started a dialogue, and all of the problems that we analyzed were not problems between each other, but problems that we had to bring to employers and bring to the government, and we've done that. And so now working together, these two labor confederations have formed a network, the Red de Maquila, or Maquila Workers Network, and unions under these two confederations are really bringing together dialogue with the employers and with government.
And I would argue also raising living conditions for people there. But what are generally the conditions of workers in Honduras? For those of us who don't know.
Entonces esto avanza, este diálogo avanza no solamente con los empresarios y el gobierno, pero también está mudando las condiciones de vida de los trabajadores. ¿Podrías contarnos cómo es como las condiciones de vida normal para un trabajador?
Bueno, está mejorando porque uno de los acuerdos marco que logramos con el gobierno, los empresarios y los trabajadores, por ejemplo, es un proyecto de vivienda social, ¿verdad? La vivienda es de los beneficios más valiosos para un trabajador, para una trabajadora, porque necesita tener condiciones dignas. Y una vivienda donde tuvimos un acuerdo con los empresarios que están poniendo una parte para pagar la vivienda, el gobierno que está poniendo un porcentaje grande para esa vivienda, y la persona que trabaja en esta industria paga lo que le corresponde. Entonces son viviendas que la trabajadora la puede pagar, que hicimos que estos trabajadores frente a la banca, que la banca es muy grosera frente a las personas que somos de escasos recursos, entonces los trabajadores pudieron ser accesibles para tener un crédito, pero esto es parte de cómo mejorar las condiciones de los trabajadores. Aparte de la vivienda tenemos otros acuerdos.
So one of the most important ways that we're helping raise living conditions for maquila workers is through a tripartite agreement for dignified living conditions for maquila workers. And so it is one of the most important agreements that we've reached in the sector. It includes government and employers both helping to pay into a system that ensures that workers can have access to a dignified place to live, which is often one of the hardest to access benefits for very low-income workers. And it's something that workers have found a lot of difficulty with in trying to deal with the banking industry. They weren't candidates for loans, and so it put decent housing out of reach for them, and this agreement has changed that.
That's fantastic. So last question I've got. What's the message for other workers in Honduras who may not be organized as of this moment, and workers around the world? I mean, these poverty wage jobs are a crisis across the developing world and across, I would argue, here in this country as well. What's the message to those folks?
Entonces, es la última pregunta. ¿Cuál sería tu mensaje para los otros trabajadores de Honduras y alrededor del mundo, incluyendo en Estados Unidos, donde los salarios de pobreza realmente están el orden del día? ¿Cuál es tu mensaje para los trabajadores no organizados todavía?
Bueno, en principio a los trabajadores que no están organizados, el único instrumento que yo creo que hay que tener claro que el único instrumento que los trabajadores pueden tener para defender sus derechos, para mejorar sus condiciones, es una organización sindical. Y esta organización que sea verdaderamente representada por ellos mismos, por los trabajadores, en donde te tengan que juntar y ver cuáles son sus necesidades. Básicamente es que el trabajador va a salir adelante si se organiza. Y definitivamente una enseñanza grande que tenemos aquí es que nosotros necesitamos tener una cultura de diálogo con los grandes niveles de tolerancia, en donde yo no puedo pretender que un empresario piense igual que yo, ni el empresario puede entender que yo voy a pensar igual que él. Yo soy sindicalista, él es empresario, gobierno, pero en la medida que nosotros juntamos todos esos esfuerzos, nosotros podemos salir adelante en los procesos de diálogo con propuestas concretas y prácticas, ¿verdad?
So the first major thing that I would want to say to workers who are not yet organized is that the only instrument that exists for workers to be able to change their lives is through a union, and it's through a representative and democratic union. It's through a union where who's in charge and who is leading it are the workers themselves, where they could discuss the problems that they're facing and create responses to those problems that come from them that they are willing to put in the work to advance and move forward. That's what changes workers' lives and moves things forward for them. The other big lesson that I would share is that we need a culture of dialogue. We need to be willing to talk with people who are different than us. As a unionist, I can't expect that an employer would have the same point of view. The employer should not expect that I would come with the same point of view, but we need to be willing to sit at a table, dialogue, and find our points of common interest so that everyone can move forward together.
Fantastic. Gracias. I appreciate you taking time for us. Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias por su tiempo.
Okay, gracias.
We'd love to hear what you have to say. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or send us a tweet @ricksmithshow. Thanks. Quick break. Right back.